And one of the streams a day or two ago, I mentioned what I thought the sources were for mocking and destroying idolatry. And for some reason, I was blinded at the time. I couldn't remember the most important one. Not because it was the first, but because it was the most significant, and also because it applies to right now. The the weekly parasha is suspended for at least in the general order for Pesach, and it's the reading that is the title is the reading for this week. Shemot 21 to 51, and it talks about how God tells Moshe to gather all the elders and for them to take lambs for themselves for a paschal sacrifice. And it's not the most important thing is it's not a feast to eat and get fat. It is a sacrifice to God, though, with great significance, because the process was they were supposed to take these lambs or these goats and tie them to their bedposts for 4 days, while the Egyptians heard the bleats and whining and crying of their gods in all the houses of the Jews. And then when they finally left, they were supposed to slaughter them, and they slaughtered them before they left to mark their houses to be passed over to in one of the last plagues. And then they were supposed to slaughter them and burn them so that the Egyptians could smell their, what they thought was their god. The focus of their worship. They could smell the meat burning. I was thinking about doing this and putting on another channel with more fake production value. But the one thing about doing the will of God is you should do it as soon as you know it. You should do it right away. And I probably should have done this a long time ago. I'm doing well. even though this might contain some truth in it, anything that is not 100% the truth is a lie. And even a Torah scroll that was written by someone that is an idol worshiper must be burned. Probably doesn't smell quite as good as quite as good as roasted roasted lamb. Since I'm not a Jew, and the Goyim are forbidden from observing holidays, that's as close to I can get as the observing Pesach. How are you guys doing today? You know, the Jews are commanded to find and burn the chametz as along with the paschal lamb, but it's more than just physical chametz. It's the chametz that is inside every person, and other than mocking and destroying idolatry, that's something everyone can do, even the Goyim, to find and destroy the bad character traits that are within every person. Their anger, their pride, their ignorance, their jealousy, their greed, their stinginess. Everyone has to ask themselves, is what I'm doing really His will, or is it really just my own, including what I just did? Did I do that because that's what His will is, or did I do that just for my own ego, for my own fame, however small that is likely to be? I can't make anyone do what do what I want. But what I want doesn't matter. All that matters is what he wants. And by he, I don't mean some guy that died. Whatever you think happened before or after. God's not a man. God doesn't have a body. God never had a body. He has no image and no likeness of an image. And it specifically says in Shemot, in Exodus, where God tells through Moshe about how the Jews are supposed to observe Pesach. The only people that are supposed to observe Pesach with the Jews are the converts and those that are in the process of conversion. Now, even then, I don't think that's the case, because everyone that observes that takes for themselves a lamb, they have to be, the English translation is circumcised, but that's not correct. They have to have a Brit Milah, and then they have to immerse. Because until that moment, the person is not clean, and they aren't part of his nation. I mean, the entire Torah is about separation, about separating the clean from the unclean, the pure from the impure, the permissible from the forbidden, and separating the Jews from the Goyim. And if people don't recognize this and do it themselves, he will make the separation, and people won't like it. Everything is all right there in the text, in the Torah. But since so many people are, since everyone is wholly ignorant, including myself, the only way to be sure that what you think when you read something is to cross-reference it with the Masorah, with the tradition, with the what the sages say. Because it's their inheritance, Some Jews take it the wrong way, as that the Goyim aren't supposed to learn Torah at all, and under any circumstances, which is not correct. We're just only supposed to learn the laws that apply to us, which was more than just the 7 Noahide laws. There's it's pretty much everything other than, other than the dietary laws and the things that they go in depth into in the Gemara that don't involve things like fearing God and knowing His awe and majesty and words of Musar of how to live, how to think, how to keep yourself out of sin and out of Gehinnom. See, so many people misunderstand what a Jew is. It the halakhic requirements of what a Jew is that a person's mother is Jewish. But that has nothing to do with what their genealogy is, what DNA says. It matters if that person's mother was observant. And the nation of Israel is unlike any nation in the world, because it's not a nation that can be defined by DNA or physiognomy or even culture. Culture is a big part of it, but only as it relates to the Torah. And anyone can be a Jew if they really want to, and if they have the merit through refining their midot, of humbling themselves and accepting His will, which a large part of that is by submitting to the Masorah, the tradition, and what the sages say. No matter if you're a goy who wants to convert or be a Jew, or whether you are a Jew yourself, they are His judges that He appointed in every generation. And while it's true now that most of the people that call themselves rabbis are severely off the derrick, and at the very least show traits of being Erev traits or traits of Amalek, which the most insidious trait of Amalek is cooling off, of getting people to doubt, whether that is doubt that there is a God, whether there is a creator, but more specifically to doubt certain aspects of the Torah and whether or not they need to strictly adhere to the laws that He gave. the sages weren't just some dudes. They were some of the smartest people in history, even in even though it's not really their area of focus, of the wisdom of the goyim. They were certainly the most wise, and the only thing that really matters in the Torah. And a person really doesn't see that until they humble themselves and admit that they're arrogant and they're ignorant. And only through that process and continuing to learn do they slowly start to see. And the key thing to keep in mind is that anytime you hear or see something that they said that you think that you personally don't agree with, you have to toil and toil until you to at least submit to the fact that you're ignorant and that they're right, even though it doesn't make sense. And if you really want to understand, to toil over what they say and try to comprehend how it could be true. One thing that's really challenging for most people is they use so few words, and they assume that everyone that was going to read what they wrote already could, for one, already thought like a Jew should think. So they could at least come close to the right inference, and both through their comments about things, as well as how they cross-reference them to sources in the written law or other parts of the oral law and the Talmud. But most of that is going to be completely beyond goyim, at least until if they have the merit to convert. As a person really knows no Torah until they're a Jew, because that is one part that is very true about that is their inheritance, that they're the only ones that can really understand it, but only if they really toil, and only if they do so for the sake of heaven, and not for kavod, for honor, or for their own ego, or intellectual stimulation, or whatever other reason, other than the only reason anyone should have to learn and observe the Torah. And believe me, for all the goyim that may watch this, that that want to do more, that want to be half a Jew. You can't be half a Jew. There's no such thing. Just like the Nuremberg laws, there's no such thing as a quarter Jew. A person is either a Jew or they're a goy. And the only thing that defines that is if a person fully observes all of his laws, no matter who their mother was. I mean, it's true that you're still part of his nation in a way, because he'll never wholly forget you or wholly cast you out. But you're cut off until you put the yoke back on and you submit to him and follow what he says. And I think I know more than most goyim that want to do more. At least as far as how special Shabbat is, and I think I mentioned it a while back, a year or so ago, but I think I deleted most of those streams. And I, before I even really recognized what the significance of Shabbat was, I started getting all these signs, and I didn't realize what they were. And they would always come on Friday night or on Saturday, and I knew what it was after a while. I knew he was trying to show me something, and I really wanted to do more. But I'm just not in the I'm not in the position where I can go all the way. I can't fulfill the whole of this Torah right now. And so, as hard as it was, as I learned more, and I really tried to work on refining my midot and my flawed, horribly flawed character traits, and not put my own ego and my own thinking, no matter how much significance of a sign that I got from him. It was still also a serious test from the Satan for whether I would follow my own will or follow his. Everyone has to make their own choice. But it's imperative that a person know what the one, to know what the truth really is, and two, part of that is his will. His seal is the emet, the truth, and the really insidious part about the Satan is he comes clothed in the truth, but underneath is absolute sheker, total lies. But just like the Hebrew word sheker, shin, kaf, resh, all stand on one leg. If a person really pushes for the truth, what they thought was the truth is easily knocked over and seen for the lie that it is. I am nothing, not even dust and ash. I hope that everyone that is really looking for the truth, I hope that I hope he can grant us all the wisdom and the sight to see it and take it into our hearts and act on it. Because the truth is worse than worthless if a person doesn't do that. And it is actually a huge stumbling block. And that will lead to utter destruction in this world and the next. Because if a person doesn't take it into their heart and burn it into their soul, so that it is all that they see and all that they live by, and it becomes the thing that they judge everything else against. Eventually, a person will end up in Gehenna. That's the really strange thing about trying to listen to your heart. The person has two hearts. Not two physical hearts, but two aspects of parts of the soul. Their Yetzer Hara and their Yetzer Hatov. Their inclination to do evil and their inclinations to do good. And it's a lifelong process that never ends until you're dead to to discern which is which. There is a, thankfully, with through his infinite wisdom and mercy, he's given people a fairly simple instruction manual of how to go about doing that. But since the reward for following his laws exactly how he says, to the best of a person's ability, which includes always doing teshuvah when you know that you're wrong, and that you know that you've transgressed one of his laws. If a person doesn't admit that they are nothing, and that they need a great deal of help, for every little act, everything from slicing vegetables to trying to complete their teshuvah and return to him, and as part of that, trying to help other people to do the same. That will never succeed. It might look like success occasionally, or the worst case, it looks like success all the time. Until a person dies and finds out that they screwed up pretty bad. Person needs a lot of light to see, both on a display on a phone and in life in general. I wish there was some magic words I could give to you guys to help you out. But magic is fake. The only real help is to cry out to him and to submit. To to do teshuvah, to admit that you're arrogant like I am. See, the external things of how a person acts are definitely important because they affect other people in the world more than how a person thinks, if the two are divergent from each other. But God sees everything, even a person's own thoughts, in every finite detail. And so in that respect, if a person really wants to get close to him, they have to keep whittling down and breaking their midot until there's nothing left even in their mind that is the dust of any disgusting thought or way of thinking. And that's not just the sins that most people conceive of, like forbidden relations or immodesty or theft and murder. One of the things that is most disgusting is pride and ungratefulness. And even if it's just in a person's mind, when a person knows how disgusting those things are to him, even the flash of one of those thoughts of pride or ingratitude or jealousy or like a person bowed down to an idol, because through those thoughts they admit that even for just a moment they think to themselves that God isn't everything that He is. He isn't doesn't give people exactly what is best for them as well as what they deserve. Master of the universe, please help us all, especially your children. Please help us all to fulfill your Torah, to make your will our own. Please help us all to shun evil, to do good, to refine our midot. Please grant us all the wisdom so that we may know the difference between good and evil. so that we may see the truth and take it into our hearts and live by it. Otherwise we'll die by the lies. I wasted so much time over the last year, especially over the last 6 months, trying to tiptoe around and Baruch Hashem, thank you for beautiful, amazing creatures. I trying to what I thought was do His will, and in some small way, sure, I might have been to a very minimal degree, but more than anything, I was serving my own ego and serving the Satan, and I'm very sorry. I know it takes everyone their own time to finally snap out of it. And it's never an instant thing. There are no red pills. There's only one doctor, and he doesn't take Medicaid or Red Cross or Blue Shield. Oddly enough, he's cash only. I mean, as far as the forms of physical payment. A person can save their own life by giving tzedakah, by giving charity, and they can also buy merits that they don't have if they can fight their Yetzer Hara to give to somewhere that has that serves His will. The only place I can, well, not the only place, but the only place that I will vouch for, just to try to do the most good for the place that's done me the most good is Bezrat Hashem. the easiest website to find, and you can watch lectures there as well as donate. Is bh.live. It's really simple to remember. Bezrat Hashem to live. That's Hebrew for with God's help, which is a really good thing to, it's a really good saying to live by. If a person wants to get closer to him and fulfill his will. That's how David and Melech had, King David in Psalms and Tehillim is that's how he had so much emunah, so much faith in God, was because that was all he did was talk about it. There's the Goyim have some stupid sayings, but they're not all lies. Sometimes a person has to kind of, it's not wholly true, but it's a close facsimile. Fake it till you make it. But it's not really faking it. It's saying the words and that force a person to think a certain way over and over again, to where they literally brainwash themselves to have an alignment to think how people should think. And then through some miracle of his mercy, this process literally changes the world, changes creation, and how everything in creation interacts with that person that does that. And just like there's great wisdom in Psalms, there's great wisdom in Proverbs, in Mishlei from Shlomo Melech, King Solomon. One of the key things to remember, you don't remember anything else. Well, there's a lot. I shouldn't say that, but it's an important thing to remember. Anytime you hear something wise or valuable from a secular world or from another source other than the Torah, always know that if it is really good, it's always going to have a source in the Torah. Shlomo Melech says there's nothing new under the sun. That's definitely a good thing to remember. But one of my favorite verses from Mishlei is I think it's 16:8. Pride goes before destruction, and a haughty spirit before the fall. If a person does absolutely nothing other than remember and try to put the words of that verse into practice, there'll be a lifetime ahead of most people. And for anyone that thinks that their situation is too dire, or that they've committed too many sins, or just too far gone to do teshuvah, you should know that that's not true. Not ever. Not if you really try. I'm living proof of that. But surely there were and are worse people in the world as far as in God's eyes, and the sins that they've committed. I was far from the best. I haven't looked up the source for where it is, but it's somewhere in the Gemara. There's a story of a teacher, a rabbi that had a bunch of students that started speaking heresies, and got put on a harem on a ban by the Bet Din and the other head rabbis in the area. I forget where it was. I think it was in Eretz Israel. And he was so convinced that he had caused so many people to sin and gone off the derrick so far that he couldn't return, couldn't do teshuvah. And he got to the point where he publicly desecrated Shabbat by riding a mule and passing the edge of town. And one of his students would always follow after him, trying to learn what he could from him that was still true. He had the ability to at least be able to sift through his lies, and because he was a wise student himself, and he would during this time he would try to get his teacher to do teshuvah, and when they would reach the town's limits, that would if they passed, he would break Shabbat. He would tell a student he couldn't go any further, and a student would say, but what about you? Will you not stop and turn back? Meaning more than just physically turning back to the city to prevent from breaking Shabbat. Alluding to, will you not do teshuvah? And he told his student, it's too late for me. I heard a heavenly voice declare that all may do teshuvah except for me. And the truth about that is that is the obstacle a person must overcome to do their teshuvah. They have to say in the face of everything that stands against them, even a heavenly voice that says otherwise. It's still no reason to not try. And the kind of odd thing is there's actually a story of another sage that said he was in a scenario kind of similar to that, although it just happened all at once, where he did something and lost his olam haba, lost his share in the world to come, where he praised God for having that opportunity, because that was all he ever really wanted in life was the ability to fulfill his will and serve God solely for the sake of heaven, for his sake, and not for a reward. And just for doing that, he heard a heavenly voice, and he had already done teshuvah, but it wasn't until that moment where he praised God for his decree, because whatever he does is surely the best. Whatever his judgment is righteous and true. And so for that act, he instantly got all of his merits back. The thing that's important for people to know is that everything that important that I've said that has any value at all is not me, and it's not my opinion. It's the Torah. All I ever hope for is the ability to not let my ego and my own false desires get in the way of the truth, and to not make a mistake, and then to if I do, to be able to see it and take it into my heart, and to bless whoever it is that points out my errors. so that I can do teshuvah. One way that I see to aside from reading the sources in the Torah and then verifying a person's ideas on what they mean with what the sage's commentary is that is by looking at money. Like the last few weeks, every time I've looked up almost any topic about the Torah online, there's always some Messianic church ad or Messianic Judaism or whatever sheker. There's no shortage of millions upon millions of dollars in as the church uses or whoever represents them wherever they are. And there's no shortage of money from heretical Jewish organizations or atheistic Jewish organizations to throw all kinds of money around and do all kinds of nonsense other than really teach people the Torah that they need in order to fulfill His law and support the poor people that do, because that's the only reason the world exists is people that learn His Torah, Jews specifically. The other thing that's pretty obvious to me is that almost all these Messianic Judaism and Messianic Christianity organizations, they all are big fans of supporting the state of Israel and not the land or his children. And all the organizations that I've seen that do these things have these heretical meetings that are against the sages and against the principles of Jewish ideology, of of Torah thinking. They all they all say and do things that are are hypocritical and think against against how someone that has a fear of God should think. They think that having interfaith meetings with Christians and supporting Israel movements or fundraisers is going to cure anti-Semitism, which it obviously doesn't. It doesn't do. In fact, it usually does quite the opposite, because God runs the world. The only reason that there is anti-Semitism is for a stick. For a stick to God, for God to use to hide his acts, so that people have to really work to see his hand. Not that he has a physical hand, but that's what people, to see his acts. And only those that humble themselves and truly learn what his Torah says will be able to see these things. Because he wants you back, but he doesn't want you in pride. He doesn't want you in arrogance and immodesty and filth. Not because he's arrogant, because that's best for people. Because if they don't humble themselves, and they don't constantly remind themselves that if they are proud, and constantly run from those things, run from pride, run from immodesty, run from honor. They don't constantly do those things, they'll forget and they'll go right back there. Usually without too much time that passes between. I know it's hard for a lot of people to understand, why that is. And the only easy answer is, is because he said, and he did. That's the way he made things. But since most people aren't wholly acceptant of the only thing that should be is that if we don't live like that, we don't, no matter who you are, Jew or Goy, if a person doesn't live like that, they do all kinds of horrible things that destroy their soul. And the truth is that It couldn't have been any other way. Not if we wanted good. Anything else would have been absolute evil. And you have to know that in your heart. You have to constantly remind yourself that whatever it is, whatever I see, whatever you see that you don't understand or you can't accept as good is our own failings, because we're people, we're not God. Like when Moshe was in Shemaim getting the Torah, God said to Moshe, you won't see, you won't be able to look at my face, but you can see my back. He wasn't speaking to Moshe, he was speaking to everyone else. And he wasn't talking about his physical body because he doesn't have a body. The Torah just uses words that people can understand. He meant that people won't see his presence and the evidence of his actions in their life and in the world until a great deal later. For most people and most things, that won't be until they leave this world. But if a person really learns this Torah and applies what they learn to their own lives and lives it, a lot of times they can see his presence and his actions in their life and in the world. Eventually, while they're still here. Is that the day today in the real calendar? I think Pesach is the 15th of Nisan. The whole reason for there's two reasons for the Goyim not celebrating any holidays. One is to make that separation between the Jews and the Goyim, so that they don't get mixed and slowly stop observing his Torah. If they don't keep themselves separated, that's always what happens. History proves that. And the other thing that history proves quite obviously is that every time that happens for bad enough and for a long enough period of time, he's forced to do some horrible stuff to separate his nation, to ensure that that still exists. Because if you wouldn't do anything, it would just keep assimilating forever, and then there would cease to be a Torah that was kept, and then there would be no purpose for the world to exist. And the other less important reason, but on in some respects just as important, is that if there's no distinction made and the goyim can just keep whatever they want of the Torah, one, it does the same thing anyway. It creates a lack of separation, but also it does a huge disservice to any goy that really wants to do more, because it takes away any motivation for them to convert. If you can just pick and choose and think you're a half a Jew or a quarter Jew or whatever, then you have no reason to really become a Jew, a B'nai Israel. I was thinking about something someone asked in a thread I started on a forum before I got booted off. He asked who the first Jew was, and I told him it kind of depends on what your definition of a Jew is. I can't remember what I answered. I think it was either Avram or Yaakov. And while it's true that Avram got some of the oral law before the giving of the Torah, and while it's true that even though the Torah wasn't given, that Yaakov is where the where the nation of Israel is born out of. Really, the first Jew was Mordecai from the book of Esther. He was the first person in the Tanakh to be called a Jew, even though it's not really correct. The word Jew wasn't even a thing until like 1,000 years later or something like that, 1,500 years later. It was called Mordecai Yehudi. And that was because he separated himself, not just by his observance of the Torah, but also by how he looked. That all the goyim in Bavel could see that it was Mordecai walking from a long ways off. Because they kept themselves separate, especially Mordecai. They made a distinction of themselves, a contrast of the Jew against the nations. And that in itself is just as important as in a lot of respects as following the rest of the Torah. As if everyone looks the same, and people's minds they start to think that maybe there's not that much difference between us. And then everyone starts intermarrying, and then all of a sudden, fewer and fewer people keep the Torah. Fewer people learn, and then there's no light to the nations. And then he has to harden the hearts of the nations, and all of a sudden, for no reason. See, that's the funny thing about that meme. The all the horrible things, they don't happen because because of the Jews, the things the Jews did to the Goyim. Even if they were Arab or whatever, or whoever they were amongst his nation, they could do all the things that the Goyim perceive as horrible, as long as they're not breaking his laws. It wouldn't matter. There would never be any pogroms or holocausts. Usually the two kind of coincide, though. Not always, though. I think everyone, both Jews and Goyim have to accept that whatever problems that you face, that I face, it's no one else's fault. It's our fault. And if we want things to be better in our own lives, we're the only limiting factor. We are our own stumbling block that we place before our own blind selves. That's really one of the first lessons in the Torah. The fact that God doesn't like shifting blame, even if it's not all entirely one person's fault. He expects us to accept whatever happens as our own faults. He'll deal with everyone else, with whatever they deserve, they will get. He expects each of us to not blame someone else. Just like when he came to Adam and asked what happened, and he blamed Chava, and then he asked Hava, and she blamed the snake, and so he cursed them all. because they couldn't just couldn't break their midot. They couldn't humble themselves and accept their own share of the horrible thing that they did. I know it's really hard most of the time to do that, especially in the moment. If you're anything like me, my initial reaction is, I didn't do it. And even if that's true, that's the wrong thing to say. A person should try to, when someone else rushes to judgment, a person should try to be sympathetic and then see that whatever lashing out or angry response that person has towards you know towards you or towards me, it's 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 God using that person's own flaws to point the mirror at us to see how we'll react. As hard as it is a lot of times. Needless to say, if we do actually have a legitimate first-hand part in whatever transpired, then a person has to try to retrain themselves to immediately submit to the truth that I made a mistake and I'm sorry. Please forgive me, and ask how I can rectify the damages that were made. And the really hard thing is to not relent at that. The hardest part of doing teshuva for myself, between myself and another person, for certain people that are close to me, is asking for forgiveness. But it's a crucial step. I said that a person has to ask at least 3 times, or until the person gets physically angry, and then you've fulfilled your obligation. Unless it's a rabbi or someone that teaches Torah, especially if it's your teacher. In that case, it's said that a person has to keep asking 1,000 times. So it's best it's best not to get in that situation in the first place. One of the things that a lot of people don't like is the honor that is given to rabbis, and the reason why people do that is because it's in the Torah. It's there are definitely a lot of rabbis that take that aspect and fall for their Yetzer Hara and use it for their own ego and their own pride, and it usually destroys them in the end, even in this world. But the reason is, and the source in the Torah is Moshe. Like he didn't want the honor. He didn't want. He wanted God to change the book of Leviticus, the opening word of the or the opening significant word of the book of Vayikra, and the Torah portion, the Parashat for Vayikra is Vayikra, and he called, and I forget what the Moshe wanted to erase one letter from the book. I forget if it was I think it might have been the Resh, but don't take my word for it. I haven't physically looked at it. I'm just trying to recall from listening to Rabbi Yeroim Rubin's shiur. They wanted to erase one letter so that it said, that would be translated instead of he called, which, is God called to Moshe. He wanted it to read, he happened upon Moshe. Like it was just an occurrence, a chance meeting. And God said, no, this is no time to be humble. You're not Moshe right now. You're my representative, and you have to fulfill a certain role, and it's there's no time for humility. And so the reason people give honor to the rabbis is not for a man to have honor. It's so so that people give honor to God and to His Torah, because they're the ones that are in charge of giving it over. Because without them, people will be left to do all kinds of stupid things that are against God. If all they had was the written word, they didn't have people that studied and knew, and if there was no Masoret, if there was no oral tradition that was kept the entire time. And it's also for people's benefit, like everything. If people don't respect the position of their teacher, of the sages, of someone else that is wiser than they are, that has toiled more, then at the very least they're doomed to failure, and at the worst they will be so arrogant as to not listen. in the first place and never even start on the right path, because they'll hear certain things just like Koach did and caused the rebellion, and then God made the entrance to Gehinnom open up and swallow Koach and his followers and all their families, other than I think a couple of Koach's sons that did teshuvah before it got too late. It's a wholly unnatural thing to do, to submit to authority. At least for most people that consider themselves thinking people, or proud. Definitely not for proud people, which kind of oddly enough usually go hand in hand, but not always. But if a person uses their intellect, if they use their reasoning, and they study enough under the proper teachers, whether they're alive or dead, which you should have at least one that's alive, because otherwise you're not going to know certain things that that's how they relate to these days. And also, it's good to have someone that's somewhat close by that you can, or alive, that you can interact with to ask relevant questions to. Because you can kind of ask questions to a dead guy if you really know everything that he wrote in great detail. But most people aren't that knowledgeable. So if a person doesn't have that, and it's just one of many things that a person needs in their life to guide them and to keep their ego in check. I gotta get going. I hope all the Jews that are out there have a Chag Sameach, and I hope whoever you are, I hope you only do what you are permitted to do, and also what you should. Talk to you guys soon.